Hello everyone. Today we're going to start modeling our game character. We're going to be creating today just the basic body. So we're here in the quad view. Let's go to the front view, press space. Then let's go to image plane, import image, and let's look for our reference here. So it's going to be my animation for games, body modeling, and I created this guy here. So it's a not very complex character. Has a helmet, so it's actually a little bit easier than the characters that we are doing in our animation 2 class, but it's complex enough so you get the feeling of creating a professional game character. Notice that I have a T-pose here and a side view, and the detail of his weapon, which is a sword in this case, is a science fiction kind of guy here. I didn't put much detail on this. I created this very quickly on Autodesk Sketchbook, which I use for this type of reference instead of using Photoshop. So I expect you guys to create something like this. So it's nice to use a gray background. Is easier on your eyes when you're modeling instead of just white one. So I have my reference here. Let's move this so the feet is really aligned in the ground here. The thicker line here is the ground. Then let's move this so it's really in the center. And then we're gonna come here in the side view and we're gonna do the same thing. But now we're gonna put the side view on the center here. Try to use the head as the reference of what it should be in the center, like the head and the hips. So here it looks good. So now we go to the perspective and let's make sure they are a little bit farther away. Okay, so we're gonna start modeling this like usual. We're gonna start with a cube. And if you're new in Maya, the whole process of here is just like in the other software. We're going to be using the modeling toolkit here, or the contextual menus, the marking menus. You get the main marking menu with the right button, right click. You can go to object mode, you can go vertex, face, and edge. If you press shift, you get the modeling tools like the extrude and the other ones. But you can access everything either here or with the shift here. So for example, you have the, for example, if I press here, shift, right click, extrude face, it's the same one I have here in the extrude. If I go shift click here, wedge faces, connect component, we have the same command here. So what I'm gonna start doing here, let's undo some commands I did here. Let's start again. Move here, let's go to the channel box. I'm gonna go to the input here and I'm gonna put 2 divisions here. So I get more cuts here. Then I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. Make sure I have the symmetry on, object X, and I can start doing some modeling here. Remember, when I want to center in an element or in an object, I can just press F and the camera is going to be centered around this when I'm doubling around. So I selected all the faces in the corner. Now I'm gonna extrude this just in two axes, just in the red and the green, picking this little square here. So I get something that, actually when you do that you have to turn on the symmetry, sometimes forget this. Okay. Okay, that's what I wanted, more like a cylinder. Now it's just a question of moving the point around, extruding the faces, and creating a body. We remember when we are in the mode 1, if I press 3, I get a preview of the smooth version, but we are working mostly on the 3. If we go 2, you see both. You see the low poly version and the smooth version, but we're going to be working mostly on the mode 1. If you press this little button here, you get a X-ray vision, which is really useful, and you're going to be turning on and off throughout the process. So let's turn on the symmetry again, and now it's just a question of pulling like the vertices and doing extrudes either here or just pressing shift and using the extrude face. So let's select those points here with symmetry on. Let's just move this down, and let's move this down too, so I can create some correct lines for the waist. Now I'm gonna move this down here and then to the right, or just let's select the move to the right to start creating the chest. And let's extrude this one more time, this, and another time here. Notice I created one line that's gonna be crossing across the arm. That's gonna be important later on. So let's move those points here to get the basic shape of the chest. So here, let's position this on the top of the belt. Extrude one more, the same thickness of the belt. And then one more, and one more. And now just moving those points. So I'm the game here, it's always the same. You have to try to get the shape with the minimal amount of polygons possible. It's something that takes time to get used to, so in the beginning you're probably gonna do more cuts and more extrudes than you need, so it's better actually to start with less and then adding more. So for example here I just needed to extrude one more, and I'm gonna scale this down, so I'm creating a pelvis here. The pelvis tends to be always the more complex part to create in a character, especially when you're learning. It's not a very intuitive part of the body, but with time you get there. So now here on the side view, let's just move those points and get the basic shape. In the beginning, I tried to just move that on one axis here, so they're still aligned. Later on, we're gonna have to move in all directions and now the 3D axis, but it's good in the beginning if you have like a more organized and aligned topology. So that's why in the moment I'm not moving the points up and down, just to the left or right. Remembering I'm in the side view, so left and right represents, in this case, going to the front and going to the back. So I'm gonna organize here the middle line and just following closely the form of the reference. So let's move this here and this. And again, this first pass here, I'm just trying to get the overall shape. I'm really more worried about the exterior lines. Later on, I'm gonna go back and make the topology a little bit more aligned with the other features of the character, the more internal features. So let's move this here and this here. Let's take a look in the 3D view. Looking here at the pelvis, we have to fix this. It looks too pointy. Let's move this and move this. And here in the back of the pelvis, we need to make this much wider. So this is the butt of the character. So you have to make this bigger, and we're gonna move that down. So you're gonna start creating like the shape of the part where you're gonna extract the legs in this character. So let's move this down here so it gets more of a round look, and up here. And let's check here on the front and on the top. I'm taking a look in this area here where I'm gonna create the neck. I'm gonna connect those 2 points, and now I can move this so this area is gonna be a little bit more aligned with the reference. So something like this, and let's move this like here, and let's check this on the perspective view. If you look here, this is the area where we're gonna extrude the arm. So we need to have an area that's gonna look like a hexagon. So basically 2 polygons, like 2 quad polygons, but they are gonna be one on the top of the other, and they're gonna form an hexagon. This hexagon will be the starting point for the arm. So I can select those 2 here, and then I can extrude my arm. So I'm gonna move this up a little bit so I can extrude. I had to go outside of the side reference a little bit so it would look better with the front reference. So sometimes the front and the side view won't align perfectly, especially if you just did a quick sketch. So in this case, you're gonna have to pick one to be like the real reference. In this case, I'm following more the front view for the arm here. You probably notice I have like the armor of the guy in the reference, but I also have some dotted lines. Those dotted lines, they represent the actual body without the armor, and that's what I'm modeling right now. I'm not really thinking about the armor at all. I'm just creating the basic body. So I'm just creating enough cuts using the extrude, enough divisions so I can get the shape of the basic body. So with those points here, I can start moving them and getting the shape I want, following the reference. As you notice, just as I was explaining, I'm following the dotted lines. That's the shape of the basic body. And so this is gonna be the wrist. Then I can extrude my hand there. So let's look on the top. Looks pretty bad on the top view. It doesn't look like an arm at all, even though it looks like an arm in the front view. So first I'm gonna fix a little bit the shoulder here, and then in the top view I can go to the edge mode and select some loops, clicking twice on the edge, select a whole loop, and then I'm gonna start scaling those down so I get a shape that looks a little bit more like an arm from the top view. Keep in mind, I do not have a reference for the top view, so I'm just doing my best to get something that looks like an arm. If you're not feeling confident about the top view, you can either draw a reference to, or you can just check some anatomy books. So I'm just gonna scale all those edge loops here. This last one's gonna be the wrist, so it needs to be more like a circle. And I still have to move some of those points. I think the arm, this arm is still too thick. I need to move this like here and move this like this. So it is still a very strong muscular arm, but now looks more like how it should be. It should look. So I'm gonna select all those edges here and I'm gonna connect them because I need to create more geometry so I can continue my modeling here. I don't have enough information in this part here. So I'm selecting all of those, I'm clicking connecting, and now I press enter, and then I use the multicut to pull the edge loop I created to one of the vertices I already had. Now I'm just gonna move those points here, so in the back they look a little bit more like the muscles we have in the back. And so to avoid that super flat look we had before, I'm gonna do the same on the chest. It looks very flat right now, so I can pull this so it looks a little bit rounder. And I can select this, which is kind of a corner. I don't want that corner look, and so something a little bit more like this. And now I can start moving and refining the shape of the chest. So let's take a look here in the perspective. I think that's a good moment to start extruding the leg. So I'm gonna extrude this down. I'm gonna select those points. I'm gonna scale them down to flatten, so I get a flat face there. I'm gonna put this around the knee area, and I'm gonna rotate a little bit, and let's just check here. So I'm gonna select the circularize tool, so select all the faces, and then let's just select the faces and flat them down again, position, scale down and rotate again. I'm just trying to get a good position and a starting point for the leg. So I'm using the multi-cut, cutting across. So now I have enough geometry to create the leg. And again, I'm using the dotted lines as the reference. I'm ignoring the armor right now. I'm gonna create the armor in the next module. So for now, I'm just following the dotted lines because I just want the basic body. So I'm extruding this down. Like this part here is gonna be still basically the knee, and the next extrude will be like the tibia. We'll start creating the tibia of the character. Then one more and one more. And again, the logic of my extrudes is it's always like, where do I need an extra line to arrive at the shape I want? So just in this case, I just needed 2 extra extrudes. So I'm looking here on the side. I have to move and scale a little bit those add loops so I get the proper shape. So moving, I'm gonna scale this a little bit, move this here, and I'm gonna slide this, then I'm gonna select those here, connect here. I have to scale this, and here I'm gonna extrude again, and that's the ankle part. And it's always good to always check how the body is looking in the perspective view. So let's extrude this down to start creating our foot. Let's move that back and scale this a little bit. And here we need to make this a little bit thicker, so a little bit of scale. So let's position this here, scale here a little bit on the top. So we're gonna create on the rest of the foot. So it looks really weird on perspective, right? So we have to really think where we're gonna extrude and move this. So I'm gonna flat those faces, and again I'm flattening, just selecting all the vertices and scaling them in just one direction. That makes them all in the same plane. So I'm gonna extrude this once and maybe twice, maybe thrice. And now I can move those points to create the starting shape I want. So if you look in the perspective, it looks nothing like a foot. We're gonna have to do a lot of work here. So I'm just gonna move this, and I'm basically moving those points so it looks more like an arc. And that's the tricky part of 3D. Sometimes it will look very good on the side and the front view, but then you go in the perspective, it looks nothing like the reference. So bear with me here. I'm just moving the points in the 3D space, and this is one of example where there's gonna be a point where you have to do the modeling on the 3D space, because to get a better sense of the volume. A lot of things you can do only on the orthographic view with the references, but usually there's a moment where you do have to start playing with the components of your model in 3D space, because, well, it's a 3D model. It needs to make sense in 3D space. It's a 3D volume. So in this case here, I'm just playing the form with the shape and moving some points, moving some faces. And this, again, this because this is a little bit of more stylized character. This is a very non-realistic boot, right? So exaggerated, a little bit much bigger than a real boot would be. So in this case, you have to be a little bit creative to figure out what is going to look good or not. So here I'm gonna extrude this down, and okay, it's looking better now. A little bit more like the reference. I still need to fix the front part. So now that we have our feet, let's try to create a more detailed arm. I already have the basic shape of the arm. I extruded from kind of a hexagon, which kind of gives you the basic shape. But I wanted to make a little bit more detailed, like here. So I'm gonna create 2 extra lines here on the top, here on the bottom, and then I'm gonna use this relatively new tool in Maya, which is the Circularize, Polycircularize, which lets you select an element, collection of elements, and then Maya will try to position those elements in a circle. That's what I actually used here in the leg, if you noticed, and we're gonna do the same here. This is a very powerful tool because it can save you tons of time instead of having to manually move like the polygons, like vertices, to create something that looks more circular. You can just select the elements and click the tool. So let's do that. So here we are gonna select those edges here on the top, including the edge on the wrist, and then we're gonna go down and select all the edges on the bottom part of the arm. And good enough. And now I'm gonna connect, press Q or enter to commit. And now I'm gonna select a whole loop of the edges here, starting with this loop here that defines the arm socket. Now I'm gonna click circularize, and I get a more, well, circular form for my arm. And I can do this for each section of my arm. I could have done this manually, but this makes our life much easier, like so much faster to just do that. Select an edge loop or a selection of faces. That's what I'm gonna do here for the wrist, and boom, we have a much better arm now. It has more divisions and it looks better. I just have to create one extra connection here, so I'm gonna connect this here. The reason I just did that, it's because in 3D animation you want to be working with quads, and if not possible triangles, but you try to avoid what we call anagons, anything that's more than quad edges. So any polygon with more than 4 is not very good. So there we have it, a more detailed arm. Still pretty basic, but we get the basic shape of it. I'm probably gonna move a little bit of the point here later on. This should be a little bit more like here, likewise this, but overall we got a more like round shape here. So let's move to the head and the neck, head, and etc. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. Checking here on my side reference, I have this metal collar here. I'm gonna ignore for now. I'm just gonna be focusing on the actual neck, which is the blue one there. So I'm gonna move those points down, and I'm gonna make this a little bit wider. I'm gonna move that down, and just looking at the reference, I'm gonna circularize this so I have a good starting point for my neck, and I'm gonna flat those points so they are in the same level, and then I can make them follow the reference a little bit. Okay, so I think we're good to extrude, and we're gonna extrude this here, looking at the reference. Again, let's flat everything, scale this a little bit, and we're gonna move here just like the beginning of the neck. We are gonna extrude this around like this, and then we're gonna rotate to create like the end of the neck and the starting of the head. It's gonna be like where you're gonna start extruding the head. So I think that's good. We're gonna move that down here just because I wouldn't normally do that with a character without a helmet, but in this case, even though I'm just creating a basic body, I'm gonna do that little change there. And now I'm gonna extrude this, and we have to think the best way to extrude. I'm gonna undo this, and I'm gonna scale this a little bit in this direction. It was a little bit too thick. I need to follow the blue line and not the white line of the color. So okay, now let's extrude this just a little bit, and then we're gonna move those points here and this here. This part here, where you go from the neck to the chin, people sometimes get confused, but you need to have this type of progression. The head should not be just like a ball with a, how can I say, the neck should not look like a pointy thing like perforating a ball. Like the neck needs to have a logic progression to the head, and that's what I did in in the chin area. So I'm here extruding what I created and looking in the side view in the front. It looks good, but if you look here on the perspective, it looks horrible. So I'm using the circularize tool to get something that's a little bit more round. And then I have to rotate those faces to get something a little bit better. So I'm just gonna move those points here and this like this. I'm gonna create some extra lines, something like here, and I'm gonna select all those points. I'm gonna rotate this, and I'm just gonna scale this. This line is gonna be like crossing like the middle of the main visor of the character. And again, this is a very low poly basic body, so I'm trying to get the shape with the minimum amount of polygons I can get away with. You can see like some of the lines are kind of not aligned on the left and right. So I just fixed that. I created a new multi-cut here, so a new loop. I'm gonna select those faces. I'm gonna try to fix those out. First, I did a little mistake during the extrude, so the vertices are not aligned on the center. So I just fixed that, and I extrude one and twice and one more thrice. So I think that's enough points, enough geometry to get the basic shape of the head. So let's just move the points here to get the basic shape, and then we look in this perspective to see and the side view. Now it's just a question to move those points around and get something that resembles the head. And keep in mind, we're still creating like the basic head, so this is like not the full size of the reference with the helmet. It needs to be something that's kind of inside the helmet. But we're not, at the same time, this is going to be the base. We're going to be extruding the helmet, so it doesn't need to be as small as the head would be if you're like actually creating the head inside the helmet. So I'm just gonna circularize this and add more divisions. Or no, actually it doesn't need more divisions. Let's just extrude this, and yeah, we need one more, and then we can move this up. That's the last part we needed for the head. Let's do some slight adjustments, and we really need to fix here on this view here. So let's move this, and let's scale this down so they need to be aligned. And looking good for a starting point, but let's take a look here in the front view. Those points here, I could move them to, they should be a little bit more further away because they need to follow the chin more or less, and this should be thicker and bigger too. Some changes here to make this a little bit rounder. We'll have some misalignment on the center, so I'm scaling everything so everything is really aligned on the center of the character. And I think we're getting there. We are almost done with the basic shape. So let's take a look here in the wrist. We're going to select those faces and we're going to extrude. and that give us the main wrist, like the main lines and polygons of the wrist, I mean. Let's rotate this a little bit and scale this up a little bit. We can, let's see here. We, for some reason, like the scale wasn't working correctly, so now that's good. So let's extrude this and let me move this, like let me flat all the vertices here, and this is gonna be the start of the hand. So I just extruded from the wrist. Now I'm scaling this up, and I'm gonna reposition here, and again I'm gonna extrude using the reference as a guide. But unlike the reference, I'm not gonna be modeling the hand inclined. I'm gonna make the head a little bit more horizontal, because this way it's a little bit easier to model, especially because I'm modeling without a reference. And later on we can reposition if we need, but this more like flat position for the hand works well, especially if we're using Human IK for rigging later on, and that's what we're gonna be using. So here I'm basically moving the point, so I have a good flat and not very big, kind of thin section, so I can actually extrude the fingers. So I need to select those points here and connect them, so I have more divisions to extrude my fingers. So I'm going to select those and connect them. Now we have 8 faces. We could extrude the fingers, like 2 in each one. But let's rotate this first. This is important because it was like slightly down, and again I want this to be a little bit more aligned, not inclined. This is gonna make our life much easier during the ringing process. And let's move this, rotate this, move here, move here, and move here, move here, and a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, and this one here. I'm just gonna make some transform constraint, so like when I move, it moves only on the edge, and now I turn that off. I'm gonna select those edges, I'm gonna bevel them, so I have a little space between the fingers, so they are not like super connected. This is quite good. I'm gonna use the target weld tool, so I'm connecting those vertices, because that vertex was much closer, really close to the other vertices. It's better if it is not there. So I'm gonna select these here. We have all those faces. I can just extrude them, so I create my fingers, and something like this, usually around the length of the palm, sometimes a little bit longer, it depends on the person. So in the beginning, the fingers will look like really big and blocky. So what we're gonna do is to change a little bit, scale them, so they're gonna look a little bit more like fingers. So I'm gonna scale, and I'm gonna edit pivot. So I'm gonna select the front loop, And I'm gonna scale this too. And this here should also be smaller. I'm gonna go back to the world mode and gonna select those faces, move them back so the finger looks a little bit more like a finger. I mean, it is still very blocky. We're still working in low poly version, but that's gonna look much better when we click 3 and we use the smooth preview. So now here in the top view, I'm just like moving some of the top points, so the finger is a little bit more round. And let's move this here. Those 3, I should move that 2. And this is a good, you can work either in the top view or in the perspective view doing this. So also this here. So this is a good starting point, and I'm gonna select this too, and I'm gonna position the pivot point there, and I'm gonna scale this so it's bigger. If you look at your own hand, you're gonna notice like the two fingers in the middle, they tend to be bigger than the other ones, and you have to take that in consideration when you're doing the modeling. The fingers are never the same length. And this one should be actually much smaller. So I'm gonna make this small, and this one's gonna be even smaller. So something like this. And I think that's a good starting point. I can, if I want, I can still play with this here. For example, I can select those edges here, and actually we can just manually move some of those points or use the edge constraint. So, and again, this way we're gonna make like the socket where the finger comes out from the hand. It's gonna look more like a hexagon than just like a rectangle. It's gonna look better, not just in the low poly version, but when we actually use the smooth preview, or if you send to another software and you have to apply a subdivision deformer or subdivision modifier. So what I'm doing here, I'm selecting the loops in the middle, and I used circularize in them to look a little bit more like some fingers. I didn't totally like the result. It looked not exactly right, so I undid that, and I actually have to fix some of those mistakes here manually, and I think that's gonna look better in the end. Again, the circularize tool is very good, but sometimes it's not the answer. Sometimes it's better to manually pull the vertices and play around. So in this case here, I'm just moving the points and rotating around to see if it's okay. So now I'm gonna go with the multi-cut tool, and I'm gonna cut across, and I'm gonna extrude a thumb here. But before I do that, I'm like targeting those vertices. Like there's no reason to have two vertices in that part. So here I need to move that with an edge constraint, and again I'm creating like a hexagon form here, and now I can extrude my thumb from this. So one extrude here, and something like this. I'm gonna flat those vertices. I'm gonna rotate. I'm gonna move and scale. Let's see. Extrude. Rotate again. Move. Scale. Now move. Like this. Extrude again. And move. Let's create one extra division, position something like this, and let's just manually manipulate the point here. Something like this. And now it's a good time to check on the 3D view. It didn't look that good on 3D, so I have to scale everything here so it's gonna look a little bit more like a thumb. And we're gonna scale this down a lot, and we need to make some changes here. So I'm just gonna select some of those points and move around, so this is gonna look a little bit more like a thumb. So this up here, and also this is gonna be like here. Looks good. I think there's a very basic shape of the hand. That's what I needed. And boom, we have our hand. So now that we have the basic shape of the character, before we finish this module, I'm just gonna refine a little bit of the topology. By topology, I mean the way the polygons are laid out in the character. This is still the very simple version. Remember, this is the low poly version. If you press 3, we see a more refined version here, the smooth preview. But this is still a very low poly, and we have to make some tweaks before we're done with it. So now just some final tweaks here. Let's see, I don't like everything that is happening here, a lot of stuff. So let's see the best way I could try to fix that. Just get this here, and we can move this, and maybe we can alt cut this, and then select all those faces, and we delete, and we have a nice quad there this time. Remember, quads are the best. So here we're gonna do something similar. We're gonna say here's kind of tough to get a quad, so what we're gonna do is to create an extra cut. Then we're gonna delete those, and we're just gonna make this triangle a little bit more subtle. And we need to create some extra lines here. For example, we need lines for the knee. So we could just connect this, and here we're just gonna get those and move a little bit. Likewise, we need something here for the elbow. We could create a bevel. We could just create a cut here. Let's create a cut. Press shift, so this is a straight line. Do it again here. Straight line. More or less what we want in here. I think we have to distribute those lines here a little bit better. So move to constraint, edge. So let's see, I want those two should be kind of here, and not so much. I think there's a little bit too much. More like here. It looks fine. Here the chest looks fine. So finally, if you want to see this a little bit more smooth, because when you're doing like a bunch of extrudes, Maya is not sure what you want to be smooth or what you want to be harsh in the low poly version. So you can just select everything, go to mesh display and soften edge. So now even when you're in low poly model, you get a more smooth version. That's low poly mode 1. If you go mode 3, then you get the subdivide version. So that's all for now for this module. It was just the basics to create the basic body. If you took my other classes, you really know how to do this pretty well. So I'm expecting you to do something pretty good. I tried to show you some extra stuff here, like the circularize tool that can be very useful. So see you guys next module.